The following episode of the Maui Chamber of Commerce's Business Matters was originally broadcast on March 7th, 2023.
It's time now for Business Matters, brought to you by Mokulele Airlines with your host, Pam Tumpop. Good morning, Pam.
Hey, good morning, Gary. How are you today?
I'm very good.
So glad to have you with us in the show. Aloha, everyone. Welcome to Business Matters, sponsored by Mokulele Airlines. I'm your host, Pamela Tumpop, president of the Maui Chamber of Commerce. And today we're going to review some legislative matters that we've talked about, but we're also going to hear from former county council member Joanne Johnson Weiner, who is actively working on the West Maui Hospital, and get an update from her. Then I'll give you a status update on several of the bills that the Chamber has been continuing to ring in on. And then we're going to talk to a new Chamber member, Marc Morin, who helps individuals and business leaders become their highest and best selves. But let's start this morning talking with Joanne Johnson Weiner. Many longtime residents know Joanne when she served on the county council representing West Maui from 2000 to 2010, then served as the Maui County Director of Transportation, and continuing, she has her long history of community service even begins before the Maui County Council, but she is continuing her community service these days and also serves on the board of the West Maui Hospital Foundation. Joanne, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Aloha and good morning.
Aloha, Pam. So nice to visit with you, and so glad that I'm still around here to do my community service.
We are very grateful that you are here and with us, and yes, doing community service, but just grateful that we still have you with us. I know, and I was so glad that you could join us this morning, how passionate you are about the West Maui Hospital project. You know, can you give us a little bit of an update on the West Maui Hospital? You know, for years we've been hearing things are moving forward, and then things have been a little bit stalled. And can you give us an update on kind of where we're at today?
Oh, sure, Pam. One of the difficulties I think we've had, because we've been working on this for such a long while, is that many of the funding sources, they were all set in place at one point, and then unfortunately the cost for the actual structure was prohibitive. And we had been before the county council. The county council has helped us tremendously with a lot of things, but unfortunately through a lot of circumstances, one of them being, of course, COVID, things came to a screeching halt. But one of the things that we always heard was that we needed some type of government buy-in, at least on a financial basis. And so that was one of the things that we set about to doing this time. And I really am so pleased to be able to report that we began a lot of the infrastructure improvements. We're not quite completed with them yet, but we really are moving forward finally after a long hiatus. So we're hoping that, as you spoke about the several bills at the legislature, and our one in particular is a special purpose revenue bond. So we're hoping that that will give us enough of that momentum so that we can go to either the U.S. Department of Agriculture or other private funding sources to put the funding in place so that we can eventually build a hospital, which we're hoping will begin construction sometime in 2024, and hopefully with, from my mouth to God's ears, be ready to open sometime at the end of 2025, 26, thereabouts.
Yeah, this is such an important project. Recently somebody had said to me that the area of Hana only has one ambulance. And so we think about all the people going to Hana, and the story that was told to me was that, imagine we have visitors out there, and if somebody gets injured and maybe they break their arm, and that ambulance is called out to help that individual, and then maybe somebody else in the community has something tragic happen. Maybe, they're short of breath, they're having an asthma attack, or worse, a heart attack or stroke. We have one ambulance. And for a very long time, the West Maui community has desperately advocated for a hospital. Can you talk to the rest of our community? I know West Maui, we'd be singing to the choir at the moment, but can you talk to the rest of our community and help them understand how important this West Maui hospital is to West Maui and why it's so desperately needed?
Yeah, and this is one of the things that I think even throughout, all my many years here in West Maui, the only way that we would get any kind of really dramatic care where somebody's having a heart attack, an asthma attack, and you need 24-hour care is by ambulance or private vehicle driven to the other side. And as many of the people who've traveled to West Maui know, our traffic is an issue depending on the time of day, also fires. We're oftentimes isolated due to weather-related storms that cut us off on the Pali. It is just an ambulance ride, everybody says, but it's very dire because it's 45 minutes to an hour under the best of circumstances. And that is just not acceptable. As many of my friends know, I've now lost two husbands, not just one, but Jim, when he was alive, he traveled by ambulance. He had Parkinson's-related conditions. And then in April of last year, my husband Larry passed away. And, unfortunately, he had to suffer the same type of treatment, which was 45 minutes to an hour over the Pali. And he suffered from a seizure disorder related to his Alzheimer's. So what had ended up happening was, even in the ambulance, they could not stop his seizures until he got to the other side of the island. And that was, between the time the EMTs came in and took him to the other side, it was more than an hour. If we had had a facility here in West Maui, it would have been much, much, quicker treatment. Fortunately, he did make it to the hospital in time, when he was still with us. But that is the kind of experience, and I can speak from personal, life experience, what happens. There have been many stories shared with us about many people's loved ones, friends. They unfortunately did not make it to the other side. We are really, really counting on this because we just cannot continue to have health care delivered on this basis. And especially during COVID, it became evident that our situation was really just exacerbated by our removal from Central Maui, because even for testing, a lot of times people would have complications. They wanted to get checked for COVID. And in the early days, people couldn't even get tested over on this side. They had to go to the other side, wait, and many times they drive to the other side and not even be able, because they were at the end of the line, and get the possible test that they needed.
Wow. I didn't know that, but I can say that I have known, and I honestly was surprised. I do want to also advocate for HANA and more ambulance services there.
Absolutely.
If, as I understand, that situation is as explained to me, because I've lived on Maui now over 40 years, and so 40 years ago, when I was a teenager when I moved here, but 40 years ago, we talked about a West Maui hospital and the importance of that. And it's just time We just have to get some services over there. There's such a huge amount of our population living there, and there's just too many. I mean, to have you lose both of your husbands, both of whom could have, maybe had a different outcome with more urgent care. The stories are so numerous, and I'm so glad that you are involved in this effort and really championing this, and working on these money bills and the bond bills to keep this going, because if not now, when? I mean, at a certain point, we have to stop and say, we've known about these long-standing, it's like our housing crisis, we have to stop and say, we're going to prioritize our key issues to address the critical issues in our community. And this needs to be that time. Really needs to be that time.
I totally agree with you. And I think one of the other things, too, is with more development, we're having our workforce really desperately needs housing. So many of the projects that will be coming up here in West Maui are going to put even greater pressure on the need for what I consider to be critical infrastructure. And a hospital is one of those things. I know Department of Hawaiian Homelands is slated to be building in the not-too-distant future. And many of the recipients who've been on the waiting list for many, many years, I'm really looking forward to having an opportunity to work with some of the young people who are in the Lahaina Luna Healthcare Career Path program, because even as we speak, many of the individuals in that program, which is really to prepare them for a healthcare career, in order to even do a lot of the experience-related education, they have to travel to the other side, to the hospitals, or just to even get their practicum. So that is really a challenge, and that is one of the things that Malia Shimamura, who has really been with that program and advanced it to a point where it is really doing well now. She has had many graduates. One of the reasons she really wants it is because of the fact that it will enable many of the students to stay with the program.
Yeah. And this is going to be essential. And how great is it that we have a career path in Lahaina Luna for our youth, and a great nursing program and programs at UHMC. But again, like you say, on the west side, you're going to have to drive into town to get a lot of that curriculum. So, but I'm glad to know it's there. And I agree with you. Housing is going to be really critical for our youth coming up. If we don't solve that challenge, I had a speech before 2019. Actually, it was a speech in 2019 that, when we look at some of the things that we're training our youth for, we don't have a lot of the careers in place for them. And healthcare, we're certainly going to have lots of opportunities, but in STEM, we often don't have a lot of those jobs. So if we're not creating some diversity, then we could be creating a lifetime of servitude jobs for our children coming up. And we want to make sure that we've got that diversity, and we especially want to make sure that we've got the infrastructure and the hospitals and the needed medical services and housing for all of this. I don't want to go too far off track, because I do want to have you talk about, and we've been supporting, and there's exciting news about House Bill 1255 and Senate Bill 1476. Do you want to talk with our audience a little bit about these bills and where we're at today?
Well, I just first of all want to thank you so much for your support. It has been really important, and it's a good opportunity to also let people know that Senator Angus McKelvey and also House Representative Ellie Cochran have been instrumental in helping to not only introduce these bills, but basically champion them at the state level for the people of Maui. It is really, really important. And currently, in fact, I believe today, the Senate bill will come up. It's not one where you can give a testimony, but it's simply to let the bill go forward over on the floor to the other side of the government. This process has really been confusing since it is so vastly different from the county council when I served there. And you have been very good about, holding my hand through this whole thing because it is new and many of the people don't realize, well, when can I testify? When can't I? Do I do it by Zoom? Do I send in testimony? And both bills now are poised to do what they call the crossover. And that is a critical juncture. So far, I think Kyle Yamashita is in charge of the Senate. He's in charge of the House Finance Committee, rather. And then on the Senate side, one of our members, Gil Agaran, is vice chair of the Ways and Means Committee. So those two individuals have really been very helpful to us as well, listening to the testimony. And I want to thank Alice Lee as well. She and the county council have been absolutely wonderful, especially Tamara Paulton and also Tasha Kama, who had a wonderful opportunity to support the hospital through a resolution urging the state to really support the West Maui Hospital. But right now, once it does its thing and it crosses over, then we will have an opportunity to do the final push and put the bill before the governor for his signature. And so I'm asking people just look at the state legislature website, sign in. Even if you can find the time to send in a support commentary, you don't necessarily have to call in. But those bills are really critical, and it's for a $20 million special purpose revenue bond so that we will be able to get the financing, not from the state, but it is a vehicle that the state provides us, and we will go out for U.S. Department of Agriculture financing once we can get that moving forward. So I really appreciate the community's help and support and all the people that have written and called in. And I want to thank Brian Hoyle, because if it was not for him and the Newport Hospital Corporation actually putting in the funding, which we now, I think he has roughly $30 million invested in this, so it's really well on its way, and we're just hoping that we can finish this final phase and get it open and running for the people.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you mentioned Brian Hoyle and the Newport Hospital Foundation, because this is a tremendous leader who's invested a lot of money in this. And the good news is, although, anytime you make an investment like this, we always talk about this in housing, but maybe we don't talk about it enough in infrastructure, that the longer you wait, the costs go up, right? So, and you get less for your money than you otherwise could have had. So he's still hanging in there with us, and now is up to $30 million of investment, and we've just got to get this over the hump, because the longer we wait, the less we're going to get. So I just want to talk a little bit for our audience about crossover. Joanne mentioned, so what that means, and we've talked on the show a little bit about House Bill HB, stands for House Bill, and Senate bills as SP. So when a bill so what we have are what they call companion bills on this. They're basically trying to achieve the same thing, but we've introduced one in the House and one in the Senate. And that gives us two chances to get a bill through with them being heard by both houses. So if they move forward, sometimes they can die in one house and not cross over. So the good news is both bills are crossing over, which means that Senate Bill 1476 will now be seen and heard by the House based on the referrals that it receives, and House Bill 1255 will now be heard by the Senate. So that's what crossover means, and we're in that period now, so there's a little bit of a break this week for those who have been actively testifying on bills. We're going through that crossover process, and then each bill will be heard again in the new House that it just crossed over to, where it will get more input. So but the great thing is both bills have crossed over. So we have two opportunities to keep advocating and get everybody involved. Joanne, I know that you've been willing to work with people. Can people reach out to you if they want to learn more?
Absolutely, absolutely. And what they can do is they can either call me. Most of the people that I've spoken to, they have my cell number. I really think that probably the better way, though, is to reach me by email, because that, usually I'll get that right away. I don't always, if I'm busy, I won't answer my calls. Sometimes I put my phone, if I get too many calls at one time, because I have other little chores that I do. I take care of, my kitty cats, and, so that is one thing, but it's really important. So if they want, my email is minaboyd@me.com. It's MYNABOYD@ME.com. And I'm
awesome.
Happy to answer their emails.
Awesome. All right. Well, that is phenomenal, because we want to keep everybody involved. Please, also want to remind everybody the county council budget session is coming up and is soon before us. This is a time when, all infrastructure is looked at, and we prioritize different needs, and we set funding priorities. So we've got to make sure we've got really solid medical infrastructure here for our residents, and we're all working on housing right now too, so we're unified in that. But please join in. Let's help get this done. If there's other critical medical infrastructure needs, please let us know at the Maui Chamber of Commerce as well. And you can reach out to us at office@mauichamber.com. We want to be here to advocate for this, because this is the time. And there's some additional funding available at the state level, and this is a great time where there's going to be some new revenue streams for the county. So we want to address our critical issues. Joanne, thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show, and I truly appreciate your tremendous advocacy on this and so many other issues. I know you've been ringing in on other issues as well as they come up, and thank you for all that you do for our community.
Thank you so much, Pam, and thanks very much for staying with us on this and being also a very good advocate. And I just want to say that my theme is never give up. And I'm not giving up.
Because if you do, we lose. We all know that if you don't keep trying, if we just stop,
thanks so much,
then nothing
Pam,
moves forward.
and aloha.
Thank you, Joanne. Aloha. Have a wonderful day. Okay, we're going to take a quick break from our sponsor, Mokulele Airlines, and we're going to continue on with the legislative update.
Mokulele Airlines operates the largest commuter airline hub in the country, right here in Kahului. Fly Mokulele from Kahului to Molokai, Lanai, Hana, Waimea, Kona, and now Hilo. Mokulele also operates the only flights between Kapalua and Honolulu. There is never a middle seat on Mokulele, and every seat has a window and aisle. Visit mokuleleairlines.com and take your next flight from the newly renovated Mokulele Terminal.
Welcome back to Business Matters. So what is going on at the legislature, Pam?
Gary, thank you so much for asking. Well, crossover is scheduled for this Thursday, so that is what I was just talking about, and we're excited that, again, the West Valley Hospital bills are both crossing over to the other houses. So we wanted to just kind of give everybody a quick update on some of the past bills we mentioned. One of them was it was previously shared. It was called Senate Bill 42, which would require employers to provide employees with written notice of their shift schedule at least 10 calendar days before the employee is scheduled to work, and would require employers to pay 2 times the regular rate to employees when their schedule was not given in that time frame. We were very concerned about this bill, and it's not because we don't want employees to get early notice. It's because there are so many people still not showing up from work or sick, still dealing with COVID or other issues where they're calling out from work, and employers are having to make shift changes left and right. So we were concerned that this bill wasn't even a provision that that employees voluntarily trying to cover shifts or trading shifts, it was going to be a provision that was going to be very challenging. It was deferred to the Labor Committee. So right now, this bill is not moving forward. And so, again, we want always to give as much notice as we can, but right now in these times, we're finding it very hard. And so we're looking at other measures. What else can be done? So it's been deferred. So that means it's not moving forward at the moment. A bill we're very excited about, Senate Bill 69, is on coastal zone management and sea level rise. And it sought to look at sea level rise and manage retreat holistically, something that we've been talking about here in Maui County. We've got some rules coming up before the Planning Commission in March. Well, later this month. And, the challenge is we're trying to look at it very holistically and not be too prescriptive until we look at all of the elements. And also, we're going to have to be prescriptive to some degree because this is not going away. Sea level rise is an issue we're going to be contending with for decades. But the question is, what are some of the mitigating measures and understanding those? What are some of the nuances and differences between properties? Not all properties, some are really tragically going to need to be looking at managed retreat or major repairs very soon. Others might be in the next 10 years. Others might be in the next 20. So we've wanted to see this be, and it's a statewide issue, but each island is going to have their own nuances. So we're excited to see that this bill is moving forward and help address some of our concerns as sea level rise is being addressed on a county-by-county basis. And we're hoping to see the state kind of look at a comprehensive plan as well. So this bill is something we were thrilled about, but yet, unfortunately, was deferred in the Senate Water and Land Committee. So what that means is it's now stalled, and so it's not moving forward. On the general excise tax exemption bills, there was Senate Bill 606, which is moving forward, that exempts gross receipts received by a hospital, infirmary, medical clinic, healthcare facility, pharmacy, or a practitioner licensed to administer drugs to an individual, and the sale of hearing aids. So we have long wanted to exempt medical services and medical prescriptions from general excise tax. And so this bill is still moving forward. Senate Bill 149 to establish a continuous legislature and Senate Bill 150 to lower the qualifying age of voters to 16 years of age both died. These were measures that were kind of interesting this year. They were some of the outliers. We did not talk about these two earlier on, but they're bills that really, it's something these are measures that somebody's bringing up and thinks it's really important. We also have to look at what it would take to do a continuous legislature, and there's a lot of steps that have to be considered before we just go from where we are now to something like that. And then, how do we feel about lowering the qualifying age of voters to 16, and how informed are they? And life experience do they have to understand some of these processes and how legislation actually works? So those bills both died. We are also monitoring the county council bills as well. And so the county council put forward House Bill 111 and Companion Bill Senate Bill 230 to allow the minimum wage to be set by the county, and that died. Our concerns with that is many businesses do business statewide. This is a very complicated challenge for businesses when they would have to account for employees differently in one county versus another. And we just feel that it really is problematic on a statewide level, too. So we're glad to see that that measure died. For affordable housing and rentals, many of the bills we brought up a few weeks ago were not heard in their final committee. So that's disappointing because that means they will not move forward. However, we also know, and just again for the public, we've shared it on the show before, that when you get a bill with 3 referrals, it's can be the kiss of death from the get-go. It's really hard to get a bill heard in 3 committees when it gets 3 referrals. However, there are some bills that are continuing on in the process. So we are still encouraging people to get involved. If affordable housing and rentals is important to you, this is the time when I want your ears to perk up. So the first bill is House Bill 202. So it allows the Department of Land and Natural Resources through the State Historic Preservation Division. I have this frog in my throat these days, just early in the mornings. But it allows the State Historic Preservation Division to contract its review of proposed state projects on privately owned historic properties and projects affecting historic properties to third-party consultants if the department can't complete the review in 60 days. So we are not saying that the State Historic Preservation Division, that their review is not important. It's very important. But they also have a lot of other very important duties. And one of the things that we found when it comes to affordable housing and rentals is that their review has been very slow and held projects up for a long period of time. So what it means is, in contracting with a third party, if they can't get to it and complete the review in 60 days, they can subset out that work to third-party consultants who still have to do the review. It's still the review with the same conditions. They still have to meet the standards of the review. But it allows other consultants who are well-versed in this area to come back to what they call SHPT, and which stands for State Historic Preservation Division, and get that review done so that we're not stalling affordable housing and rental projects. The next bill is Senate Bill 764. This allows a bank to invest in aggregate up to 2% of the bank's total assets in limited partnerships, limited liability partnerships, limited liability companies, and corporations formed to invest in affordable housing residential properties. So why is this important? Well, it's another avenue of funding that helps us move forward with quickly getting affordable housing and rentals moving forward, because we are way behind. And so it's critically important that we start getting things built. And as I shared on infrastructure, the same is true with housing. The longer we take to get off the dime and move forward with projects, the more costly everything is. And now we've seen fires across the nation. We've seen a lot of lumber damage in areas that grow lumber. We've got natural disasters that have caused a lot of damage, which means we're competing for, as they're looking to repair and maintain their cities and towns, we're all competing for valuable resources. They're needing to rebuild. We're needing to continue to build. So we really need to shore up some of these inequities that have been long-standing issues. So it's always nice to have some other avenues. And then, of course, we've talked about access deer. For those of you who know me, very near and dear to my heart from 2 standpoints. One is that we are their only predator to address this invasive species problem. And they are damaging everything from farms. They're getting down into residential areas. They're causing accidents on the road. They have long been damaging our watershed. we really must address this issue. And so we've been looking and working with Senator DeCoit and others to keep these bills moving forward. Senate Bill 99 to establish a meat and poultry inspection program is still alive. This is critical because there have been issues with using USDA inspectors and the cost of using USDA inspectors to inspect when the deer is cold, and we need to get it to the slaughterhouse. And then we also have issues with Senate Bill 1486, which requires the Department of Agriculture to collaborate with other agencies and the County of Maui and specifically the County of Maui Access to Your Task Force, started by Councilmember Yukile Sugimura, which I and many others sit on, to develop and implement a plan to expand the meat processing and distribution capacity in our state, and to allow for meat from excess deer and other wild game to be processed for distribution, and distribution by nonprofit food services. And that bill is still alive. So this is very exciting. We can do amazing economic development projects and use this valid resource to feed those in need. Of course, our hunters have been enjoying venison for a very long time, and they've been giving it to many friends and family. But our law doesn't allow them to donate. There's huge liability issues that they face in Hawaii that aren't faced in other states. They found a way to safely donate meat, as can we, to nonprofits who can then distribute it to those in need. We can build a wonderful venison product within our food industries here and our restaurants and through our hotels. We can do all sorts of other things with our deer and really create new and diverse avenues to create products from this. So we're excited about this, but it's going to take slaughterhouses changing the liability law, and it's going to take I'm sorry, so I just had a bell ring, so it took me off my game for a minute, but it's going to take slaughterhouses changing our liability law and working with the State Department of Health and USDA on how we can work with other inspectors. Can we build our own cadre of inspectors here so that we have an insulated system? And then to create a long-term plan and develop that strategic plan so that we can maximize the return on investment and take an invasive pest to a sustainable solution. So very excited about that. I understand our Maui member is on, Marc Morin, but before I introduce Marc, I just wanted to say we talked about last week and in the weeks leading up to BizMix Maui. We had our big fundraiser at the Grand Wailea Maui this past Saturday, and I just really want to thank our elite sponsor, Alaska Airlines, Maui Health, our title sponsor, Ainalani Pacific, Encore Events, The Transform, Grand Wailea Maui, HC&D, Maui No Koe Magazine, Pacific Media Group. They were all presenting sponsors. We had First Hawaiian Bank, Goodfellow Brothers and Pacific Rim Land, Hawaii USA Federal Credit Union, One Digital, Simplicity HR were our premium sponsors. We had our associate sponsors, AES, Aloha International, Hawaiian Cement, Mahi Pono, Matson, and Southwest. And contributing sponsors, 5A Rent-A-Space, AARP, Alexander & Baldwin, American Savings Bank, Bank of Hawaii, HMAA, Maui Gold, Scogan Rasmussen LLC, State Farm, and Zippy's. And, of course, Maui Brewing Company was our special beverage sponsor. We deeply appreciate their help. And we had two featured chefs. We had great dishes from the Grand Wailea chefs, as you can just imagine. So it was a multi-course dining experience with Cirque-provided performances throughout, and a great networking time. We were thrilled to have Mayor Bisson with us and his lovely wife. And then we had two featured chefs, Marc from 62 Market and Mitzi from the Maui Cookie Lady. So wonderful night. Thank you all. We had so many others who contributed to our silent auction. want to thank our chairwoman, dynamic chairwoman, Sylvia Ho, who handled the silent auction with her great team, and just all of our board of directors and members who participated. It was a great night, and it's nice to be back. We had done it in March of 2020, just before COVID hit. It was sort of the last big event before that, and it was nice to have it back after a 2-year hiatus. So mahalo to all who came and joined us. It was just so exciting to see everybody and have a dance party at the end. It was a lot of fun, so thank you for that. Now I'd like to introduce you to Marc Morin. Marc is an executive coach who is passionate about helping entrepreneurs become their best selves to better their business. He is a third-generation small business owner who coaches founders privately and through the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. So Marc is a new member to the Chamber. We're thrilled to have him. Aloha, Marc, and how are you today?
Aloha, Pam. Thank you. I'm good. I am awake, and you are the first human I've talked to today, so hopefully my brain will start to come online as we start to chat, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me on. And
it's our great pleasure.
And I know we met last summer through your mother, and I just wanted to appreciate you for being so generous with me in your help.
It has been my pleasure, and I've loved every conversation that we've had. It's my pleasure, and I'm so glad to have you on the show because you've really gone through a tremendous journey to, as a business person, to get to this place about becoming a coach and changing your life. Tell us a little bit about that journey.
I'll start with what I think is probably the beginning, the first seed I had, and I didn't even know coaching was a profession at the time, but I remember in college taking a psychology class, and there was a psychologist, I think his name was Abraham Maslow, who was speaking about self-actualization. And I remember having this, sort of like naming that, it was naming a desire I had, which is to become the best that I could be, And back then, and that was when I was in college, it was quite a while ago. I won't say how long ago because I don't want to date myself. But those were difficult years for me. I had been, there were some difficult things in my family and a business. My dad's business was floundering at the time when the real estate market froze up because of interest rates rising. And there was just a lot on my shoulders, and I felt a weight at that time in my life. But having that seed of, I want to become the best I can, it's just something that always propelled me forward, even in some of the darker or more difficult times. And so I always just invested in my learning and growth. And whenever I had extra time or money, I would typically just invest it in something that would help me learn and grow and become more of who I could become. And now, as I look back, I'm like, okay, that paid off. And I was never sure where it was leading along the way. But as it turns out, it's led me into a profession that feels like my purpose and my calling. So I'm happy with where it's led me. And I was in my own business also for 14 years. And I took my first coach training in 2005. And that's when I knew I wanted to be a coach. But I just kind of was managing my business. And then at a certain point in time, I knew my soul was ready for something different. And I transitioned out of the business, and now I've been helping others. So that's a bit about my story.
What was the business that you were in for 14 years?
I was in a product-based business. So that was the business. And I've been working with people for, in various businesses. And I find what I'm helping people on the most, it's personal and leadership. And so the business itself doesn't actually matter as much because leadership, personal development, leadership development they sort of apply to all businesses.
They do. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what you enjoy most about coaching.
Good question. First of all, for me, it's my purpose. It feels like a calling and a purpose, and I feel very aligned in the work, so that energizes me. And just helping people is super satisfying to me, helping see them grow and transform and create the results they want is very exciting. Sometimes we're solving challenging problems. Sometimes people need to have a breakthrough in order to create the results they want, develop new habits or skills. And I also help, in general, I try to help people stay in touch with what is their most important dream. Mm-hmm. Because I think oftentimes in life, and there's so much to do and handle just to survive, we forget about our dreams. But I feel like keeping our dreams alive and moving towards them is energizing, and so I try to help people with that as well. And that's some of what I love.
I find that I love that you said that, but I find that's really true for me. That I can be doing so many things, and then if I just take a moment to also think about where those things lead and how they are a part of my dreams, you can be slumping at the end of the afternoon, but if you just take a few minutes to think about that and how what you're doing at the moment kind of connects with your dreams, that's so powerful. It's very energizing.
Yeah, I've found that to be true too. And I think it's true for others. And so just spending some time each day, the reflecting on our dream or moving towards our dream, it feeds us, in my experience. Yeah.
And sometimes we get caught in behaviors where we forget to do that. And so I like that you remind people about that and help them get to that point where they can make some time for that each day.
Like part of my work is I'm in the business of helping people remember.
Yes.
Oftentimes we know so much, but we forget what we know, and we forget to live in alliance with what we know is the best. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's very true. Well, tell people how long you've been on Maui now, and I know you're really excited to connect with the Maui business community, and what you'd like to bring to the Maui business community.
Good question. So I've been on Maui. I came here in 2020, and I have a growing circle of friends, but I actually don't know that many people in the business community, so I'm happy to be joining the chamber and connecting with people. And what I'd like to bring is, I guess, first of all, I could say coaching is such a relationship business. It's more about building relationships. So what I'd like to bring is just an offer to start a relationship with people and get to know people. And one way, I could do that is just by offering a couple of, like webinars or group coachings. I'd like to offer them to the Maui business community, something I'd offer for free, just so people can get to know me and connect with the work that I do. So that'd be something I'd like to offer. And aside from that, if someone decides they're wanting or looking for a coach, I'd be happy to have a conversation with them. And in general, what I'd like to bring is helping people create the results they want. And that varies, it varies from person to person what their results are. I don't know if it would be helpful for me to talk about a couple of examples of clients that I've helped, but I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, I think it would. To give people a sense, there's so many different kinds of coaching out there. And so to help people kind of hone in a little bit more on your style and what your coaching brings.
Fair. Yeah, I think I bring a little bit of everything. I would say, I'm calling it, my coaching is transformational. It's a big word, but what I often experience with people that work with me is they have a big shift in how they experience themselves and how they experience life and how they engage in their business. And I think that's because I have done a lot of deep personal work myself, so I can support people in deeper ways in areas where they need it. And what that translates to, I could give you a couple examples of clients I worked with last year. One was a real estate broker, and he he needed to work on his lead generation, but the ways he was exposed to and taught, he didn't really feel motivated to do them, and he needed to discover some new ways that he felt aligned with. And I find that's and what he ended up doing was winning a couple of awards and had his highest level of sales ever. And I don't take credit for that. He fully engaged in the coaching and applied it. But what was helpful for him was, and I think, for a lot of us, is if our head, heart, and our gut are not all on board with what we're doing, the results aren't going to be as good, or we could get a little stuck or move a little slower than we'd like. So it was really important for him to come into inner alignment in the ways he was going about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know you also worked with the construction industry, and that gentleman had a great breakthrough.
Yes, I had. It was actually one of my favorite clients to work with. He had I won't give too many specifics because I want to, even though he wrote a testimonial for me, but still. He had his business pretty well set up, and he had managers in place. He had been doing business for a while, and his systems and processes were good. And he was stepping away a little bit, and he wasn't sure how to engage with his business to make a difference. And what he actually needed to do was it had to be a big internal shift, because he was used to being so involved in the business, and in some ways maybe a little bit too involved in that he was seen as maybe a little controlling, which we all have this desire for control in some ways. But the way he was going about it wasn't empowering his managers. So he had to do a complete shift in the way he was approaching his managers, and he ended up making that shift. And his managers are so grateful for the way he's showing up now, and it sort of led to the beginning of a culture transformation in his company, where his managers are more empowered and engaged, and there's more feedback in both directions. That's good, healthy, constructive feedback. And he's created an environment where people feel more safe. There's a big term going around now, psychological safety. When people feel safer at work, they take more risks, and they can be they end up being more creative and innovative. So his company is a very innovative one, and that shift was important in terms of empowering his. Yeah.
One minute, Pam.
That's something. Thank you, Gary, and that's something that so many people are transitioning into, that kind of role right now. So how do they give up some of that, all that they've done for many years, to others? Mark, we're going to have to close the show, but tell everybody how they can get a hold of you.
Great. Okay, so you can find me if you're interested in having a conversation. Happy to talk to you. Marc Morin Coach, which is Marc with a C, M-A-R-C, Morin, M-O-R-I-N, coach.com.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. That's all the time we have for Business Matters today. We really appreciate Mark joining us. Wish you blessings, all of you blessings and best wishes for a beautiful Maui day. And please join us again next Tuesday. Ahui ho.